way. So Helen Wada is an executive coach and works a lot with commercial leaders in her practice. But you can also see she's the founder of the Human Advantage. And one of the, I suppose, services they provide is commercial coaching programs for organizations to really support people to develop more confidence in business development and really leverage the coaching skills and the ways of being, I would say, as a coach in the sales process. So Helen, again, I'm really pleased you can make the time for this session. So thank you.
My pleasure, Damien. It's a delight to be here, and good afternoon, everybody, on this Monday, almost at the end of September. How's that happened? Not quite sure. So look, we've got about 30 minutes, so I'm going to crack on. I'd love this to be interactive. So if you've got questions, please pop them in the chat. Damien's promised me he's going to sort of keep an eye over the questions and come in and make sure that we address those as we go through. So just in terms of, I'm just going to my, there we go, introduction. For those of you that don't know me, I do know a few familiar faces on the chat. I'm actually a chartered accountant by trade, by background. Many moons ago, qualified with a firm called Arthur Anderson, and was there for about 5 years before I started to look at my career and say, well, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And the thing in professional services was you needed to sell if you were moving up the tree, and I just didn't want to sell. And so I moved my career, I moved into industry, I had a great experience there. And actually, during that time, completed a master's in management development and organizational change. I was really interested in the people side of organizations and what that did and what that brought for everybody. Move forward a little bit, I ended up back in consulting, actually at KPMG, where I was for 15 years. Again, I was in the consulting practice. I was a technical specialist. And as I went more and more up the tree, they were like, you need to do more selling. You need to. And I was like, I'm not sure what I want to do right now. I had a couple of kids, so that kind of parked the question for a little bit. And then came back and moved into a more hybrid role internally, supporting the practice sort of across the whole firm. And then, you know, the kind of little career discussion came in again. Where do you want to go next? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I kind of miss my clients. I'm quite good at relationships. And therein started my move into business development. And for the last 6 years prior to leaving KPMG last year, I was a sales and business development director at KPMG. I launched the Human Advantage about 18 months ago, and I've been working effectively ever since as an independent coach and consultant, as Damien said, really focusing on the human side of individuals in the commercial environment. Why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because I'm one of the people that was scared of selling. I didn't want to sell. I didn't want to go out there in the marketplace in my consulting career, my accountancy career. And yet I'm sat here today going to talk to you for the next 27 minutes about selling and coaching. And the reason that I'm here is that there was a conversation that I had at KPMG probably 3 or 4 years ago now, where my counselling sponsor, mentor said to me one day, if we could sprinkle everybody with a bit of what you do, you'd be in a different place. And I was like, that's a really nice compliment. Thank you, David. But it got me thinking as to what is it that I do that builds the relationships, that builds the connections, that enables us and our teams to win work. And I kind of unpicked it, and I unpicked it some more, and I dug a bit deeper, as we do as coaches. And I came to the fact that it's all about my coaching. And we're going to go through some of this over the next 20 minutes. And this is just really a snippet of 2 years worth of thought and research that's gone on to say, what's the challenge that people struggle with, and what do we need to do differently? And so here today, I'm just going to share with you a few headlines from my thinking. But please, any questions, drop them in the chat and connect with me afterwards. I'm always happy to have a conversation with people. Okay. So we're going to cover three things really today. We're going to cover opening doors, conversation focus, and closing and commitments. And I'm going to move straight on before we do some questions to the floor. So has anybody got any questions? Is there anything in the chat, Damien, before we go forward?
Not currently,
Awesome.
but if there are some reflections or questions, please add them as we go through.
Yeah. So I share this picture because I think opening doors is like a maze. Where do you actually start? There's lots of dead ends. Paralysis in the brain. Where do we start to move forward? If anybody's got anything they want to share in the chat about what they struggle with regards to opening doors. Is there anything there?
Not yet. I'm sure there'll be some reflections in a moment.
Okay, so we'll keep going and then
So
come to the next
there's
one.
a couple that have just come through. So I can see being embarrassed about asking for payment, where to start, why do people need my support or help?
Yeah. And that's a really good question at the end, talking about why do people need my support? What I'm sharing here is a diagram that really resonated with me about who are you as a coach and who are you talking to as a client? Because that question there about what is the value that they're going to get from you, you need to understand who you are as a coach to be able to explain it to your clients. What are your strengths? Why would they want to talk to you? What are their issues and priorities that are going on for them in their business that makes what you do relevant? And I'd always encourage you to think about, what do we do for our clients as coaches? We look to help our clients understand who they are, what their strengths are. The same for you on the other side. Who are you as a coach? When I'm having conversations in the market, I always get the question, well, what's your area of specialism? Where do you focus? What's the sort of people that you help and what value do you bring? So really make sure you can articulate and take the time to think about who you are and what you bring. And then once you've done that, it's okay, so what's the conversation that you need to have with your potential client? And this isn't necessarily the client that you're going to be coaching. It's the sponsor that will sponsor you into the business that you might want to work with. Now, that may be directly to individuals. If you're contracting directly with individuals, they then are both the client that you're selling into, but also the person that you're going to be coaching. But if you're working with a corporate market and you maybe want to get on a coaching panel, who is that panel? What are their business priorities? What do they need from you as a coach? It's about finding the fit between all of those organizations out there and what you can offer yourself. Is there anything else in there, Damien?
Yeah, I've just seen another one came through around imposter syndrome, and also struggling with knowing what people think they want and need and making the connections to get the conversation started.
Okay. So I think, look, I'm just going to answer those now and then we'll move on. But the imposter syndrome, we work with our clients with this all the time. What would you be saying to your clients? I've got a little exercise if you've got time later about what are your limiting beliefs around sales and business development? And then what can you do to kind of go against that? You know, what are the positives that you can put against that? I think there's this sort of opening doors. How do you show up? How do you get in to have these conversations? I would always favor warm leads over cold calls. What does a warm lead mean? Who have you coached before? Where are the recommendations? Who are the people that you used to work with in previous careers and previous history? What do your friends do? What businesses do they work in? Can you get a warm lead to have a conversation? And one of the things that I always look at is one conversation at a time. What do you want from that conversation? What could they value from the conversation with you? Having those conversations, the more conversations you have, the more you'll learn about what the thinking is in the market, and you'll be able to articulate your story in a way that resonates with them. Make the no's a positive. I think we're all scared of a no. I've been scared of a no. I was scared of a no in KPMG. I'm scared of a no now, because we all want to work with different people and to be successful. I like this picture because I like the light bulbs on it. To go, let's collect the no's. What if every no was stretching you out of your comfort zone? Somebody that you thought was out of reach for you to coach. A new organization that you didn't know before. A learning opportunity. A fee that you didn't think you could ask for. If we don't try, we'll never know. No as in K-N-O-W rather than the no's there. But it's just a nice thing. One conversation at a time. Collect the no's. What do you learn? Use your coaching skills. What are your reflections from that conversation? Why was it a no? And what can you take forward? I think we've got time, haven't we, Damien, to do just a couple of minutes exercise.
So. Yeah.
So if you've all got a pen and piece of paper, I'd just like you to take a minute, and I've got my stopwatch here, to write some of your own limiting beliefs around sales and business development with your coaching practice. So if we take a minute to just do that, and we're starting now. Okay. So that's just a minute there. And we've got another minute, because I want you to think about things that you can put in a positive way to address some of your limiting beliefs there. And this is just for you. Okay, just another minute, couple of seconds. There we go.
Helen, could I just just ask you something, because I've just seen a question comment from Ruth, which I thought was quite interesting. So I know when I was in the other role when I was a buyer of coaching. Like I
Mm.
never used to answer cold calls, you know,
Yeah.
and actually a couple of my colleagues, so it's very similar. I just noticing the reflection from Ruth around it's the lack of response that she finds difficult, you know.
Mm.
And I just wondered about your own relationship with that, what you've learned around, you know, if you've contacted people and you don't get a response.
And it was actually quite nice to have those 2 minutes for me, because I was able to scan some of those comments. It's a really good comment, because Ruth, I share your frustration. It's hard. It's hard, that lack of response, not knowing, well, did what I say land, or were they just not interested? I'd rather a no than the lack of response. The way I always think about it is, how can you keep in touch without just that sort of almost pestering? Have you read it? One of the things I find is, you know, are there articles that you think that might be relevant to them, that you think of them? Can you send that over? I had an example when I was first starting out on my own, and I had the same thing, and somebody that I knew quite well, but I just wasn't hearing anything back. And then all of a sudden there was a really great article that I thought, you know what, she's going to love that. And I sent it on, and then automatically I got a response back on my first email about the coaching. Nothing to do with the article, but it's just, what can you do to remind them that you're there? Because very often it's not that they're not interested, it's just not at the top of their priority list. And I think that's what we always have to think about. And I saw Rachel's question about, I struggle with people knowing what they want and what they need. Again, I'd encourage you to put your coaching hat on, because before you talk about any of the coaching that you can offer, it's about understanding the context in which they're operating. Is that helpful?
Yeah, great, Helen. Thank you.
I get my, there we go. Comes onto this conversation focus, actually. It's a nice way of coming in. But it's about, what is the focus of the conversation when you're meeting people? Do you understand their business priorities? Do you understand why they need coaching? And how do you set that up? I've got a few pictures here. Again, I say I like the pictures, but it's about your mindset. It's about, what's your attitude? How are you going in? What is the behavior that you're trying to create? What is the trust that you're building when you're having these conversations? And plan the conversation. What's the meeting for? What's the purpose? What's the agenda? Are you setting it up in a professional way? Why would they want to spend time with you? What do you want to get out of the conversation? And what questions will you ask them? As coaches, we know how to ask questions. We do it all the time. But think about your business development conversations in the same way. How are you going to get under the skin of your client? What's going to be really important to them? And talking about the no's that we mentioned earlier, plan for the no's, plan for the objections. What might you say to those? Oh, sorry, I've gone into. What's the insight that you're going to create? You've got the light bulbs there. When we're in coach mode, we're trying to help our clients find insight from the conversations that we're having. The same is true for business development conversation. Why do they need you? How will coaching help them? How will it help their people? Let the conversation illuminate thinking for the people that are going to buy your services. If coaching's not right for them, tell them. It's all about building trust. And what is your story? What's your value? I shared with you a very brief story at the beginning about why I'm here, really bringing together the coaching and the commercial angle that I've had for 25 years working in professional services firms. That's my story. What's your story? What's your story that might resonate with these people that might be sponsoring you into their businesses? Or that the one-to-one people, if you're working directly, that they're going to say, I want to work with Joe, or I want to work with Jane. Asking better questions. I found a bit kind of, I'm talking to coaches here. When I was building this, I'm talking to other people as well as coaches, but you guys are probably better than most at knowing what questions to ask. Listen to the conversation, be in the moment. What do you do as a coach? How can you take and repurpose your coaching skills to have a better business development conversation? I'm just going to pause there, Damien. Is there anything that's coming through that people want to? Are we good?
I think we're okay so far.
Awesome. Awesome. So closing and commitments. How are you going to get them to move forward? What is it that you want? Where does this get to? And how can you bring the conversation down to action? Again, in our coaching conversations, it's all about the actions. What actions are you going to take away? What actions are they going to take away? And how can you shape the discussion to ensure that actions are taken to move things forward? And actually the sign of somebody really buying into you is the actions that they take after the meeting, not necessarily what they say during the meeting. Next steps. What are those next steps? Who's going to take them? What are you going to do? What are they going to do? And then we're not talking a lot on price, but about negotiation. What are the rates that you're going to charge? Are you really demonstrating your value? And are you pricing yourself right for the market? Do you understand what the market is? Do you understand what they pay other coaches? Where do you sit in that? What is your offer? How do you understand it? It goes back to asking questions up front. What do they do? How do they work? Build the trust from the beginning so that when there is an opportunity for you to be brought in, you're ready to go. And then reflect. Again, great coaches were good at reflection. Do you reflect after all your sales conversations? What went well? How did you show up? Were you present? Did you have the right questions in your kit bag prepared? And were you ready for any objections and challenge? And I always think of challenge as a positive. What's the conversation? Where does that challenge you? Where do you get to? And how can that help your conversation to move their thinking forward? So you may have noticed, for those of you, it's been quite a speedy run through, but the demystifying sales, the human approach, I've put into a sort of an easy acronym for you to remember. It's about how you show up. It's about understanding yourself and others. It's about getting into the right mindset. It's about asking better questions. And it's about how you get them to do the next steps and then negotiate for your value. So that's all about the human. And if we take a moment to think and reflect back on some of the things that I've just talked about over the last 25 minutes, a number of those skills are skills that you guys all have as coaches. And so what I'm saying here and why I'm so passionate about it is actually, I think as coaches, you're in the best possible position to use your skill set and to repurpose some of these things that you have for a different type of conversation. A few top tips. Think human first. How can you be the best you in front of those sponsors? Warm leads versus cold calls. Who can help you? Who's in your network that could refer you in? Where are those great coaching sessions that you've done in the past? No is an opportunity for stretching yourself. Plan your conversations. Plan for those no's as well. Develop your story. We're all unique. We're all different. We don't want to be the same. But what's your story? And what does that bring for your value and therefore the value to your potential clients? Focus on creating insight. not just with the clients that you're coaching, with those people that are going to sponsor you in? How can they see how you will be as a coach in that first 30 minutes sales conversation that you might have with them over an introduction? What would you do as a coach? If I was coaching somebody right now, how would I be approaching this conversation? Create an action plan, set your right price, and then reflect and repeat. So before we finish, I'd like you all just to take maybe 30 seconds, Damien.
Sure.
To write one commitment that you're going to do for yourself regards to your coaching, business development. I want this to be an action that you take away from what you've heard from me today.
Helen, can I ask you just a couple of reflections?
Absolutely.
So I've just missing some of the comments coming through on the
yeah,
chat.
no, it's kind of whistling
yeah.
through.
So just a couple of things around setting your price.
Yeah.
So I saw an earlier comment about, being on a panel versus working with an SME.
Yeah.
You might be working in different sectors. What would you say about setting a price? Any experiences you'd like to share around that? And then the second question, if that's okay, is about offering a free coaching session, because I saw a comment about that as well.
Yeah. So let's take the first one. I always try to understand from them up front where their sort of boundaries are. So I would go in with a really open question about what is the range that they're looking at. And generally, certainly if I'm talking to people that are setting up a panel, is they'll talk to me about the range that they have and where they're at. I also often try and price per program rather than per hour. So what do I mean by that? It's about demonstrating the full value of what you offer. Your value is not just the hour and a half or an hour that you are with your client. Your value is in the setup. Your value is in your running your business. Your value is in having the conversations at the beginning with the sponsors and at the end to the wrap up. So I think we often do ourselves a disservice if we're writing just per hour, and therefore you're giving them more of a full service if you look at it by program. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you.
And then the second one, remind me, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, in my experience of asking a client what their budget is, I've never had a client that said no to that question,
No.
So I just wanted to, and the second one was just, some coaches might offer a free coaching session. I just wondered your thoughts on that, really.
So I've actually just offered to do a free coaching session for a client that I don't know, and they want to get to know me and my coaching style. The way that I look at it is, how many hours would I spend trying to find new clients or having more business development conversations, where actually I could usefully use that time for them to see who I am as a coach. And that links into, I'd really encourage people to think about how can you show your coaching style in these initial meetings, because the more they can see who you are, the more willing they're like to say, this is where you're going to fit. This is how I can see it could work. Thanks,
Helen. Thank you. And just to say, I can see a couple of commitments coming through on the chat panel as well, which is great to see. So thanks for sending those through. So really appreciate your time. I appreciate it was a bit of a whirlwind tour around some of your initial thinking about this. Really hope there is value that the group have taken away from today. So really appreciate it, Helen. I'm just going to pause